Yes, thank you. Can you expand a bit on the length of meeting of a limited convention?
Sure.
The main objection that I'm hearing from constituents of mine to this bill, and these are mainly people who are very much concerned about Citizens United, is the concern that the convention will inevitably have to take up other things that they don't want to see taken up. It sounds like in your view that is not the case. You believe that in fact it could be limited to this issue and this issue alone.
Absolutely.
So if you could just clarify how that works.
Sure.
In connection with that, I'm wondering, does that in any way depend on how we precisely term our requests for the convention, that is the language that we use? Does that language need to be identical with that of other states? You mentioned 5 that have already done this. Or is there some other mechanism by which we can make sure that our call for a convention only becomes effective when we're confident that it's the right kind of convention? It seems a little bit analogous in my mind to what we've done with the national popular vote, where we as a state have adopted a law that says, that we will direct that our electors in presidential elections will vote as the majority of the country votes, but that will only become effective when enough other states have directed their electors in exactly the same terms. Is that what we're talking about here, or is there something about the concept of limited convention that allows a little bit more play?
Let me address.
Same as our attorney, by the way. I don't think you mentioned that. So I'll let him at least start this one.
Let me address that last part first. One innovation that we put into our convention calls that we got from an Oregon call that was particularly effective at achieving the 17th Amendment was the daisy chain, where we list all of the other calls to ensure that our applications counted as a single cohesive application. You can, as I've mentioned, there's already more than 35 states that have had their convention calls counted by Congress. We know that they're not grouping together ones on different purposes, because if they were, we would already have a convention call, and indeed your vote here would have no bearing one way or the other, no matter how you voted, on that fact, because Massachusetts is already in that list. But the daisy chain ensures that our application is considered with the ones listed in that chain to form a single cohesive application. So it's undeniable once we get to 34 that we have 34, and it's also undeniable that they don't count with other ones that are not considered part of that list. And in terms of the limitations, the talk I gave here today is a very abbreviated version of a much longer talk that I gave to our members a couple months ago, which was based on the 1987 Department of Justice report, which went into the four pillars it had 2 parts. The first part was the 3 ways we know theoretically a convention can be limited, and then the 4 mechanisms for limiting the convention. And the 4 mechanisms were the tools that the states, the courts, the Congress, and the delegates themselves have to enforce those limitations. Ultimately, the tools fall out of the system of separation of powers and checks and balances and federalism that have different bodies, each with powers to check each other. So no one organization of those has the ability to run away if the others are saying, no, that's not what has been called for.
Are you going to submit that longer version of your understanding of this to us?
Yeah, I certainly can. The version I have now is meant to go with the oral presentation, but I can modify it to one that stands on its own. Sure.
Might I add to that, Mr. Chair? Representative Peck, thank you. I want to be clear. American Promise has members all over the country, and we view the question of a convention as a question of strategy and tactic, not of end. And so we have members who have those concerns about a convention and members who don't, and we welcome and encourage and provide information for that debate to take place. So we don't have a position on that question, but as I say in my written testimony, I do think this language in the bill has gone a very long way to address any concerns about this so-called runaway convention concern. It's quite clear to me that this This is a call for a convention to propose an amendment to address the problem of Citizens United, period. I will just share with you my perspective as someone who's been in almost every state on this issue now. There are Republicans who are unable to get a hearing on a bill that has a convention call in a Republican-dominated legislature because the Republicans are worried about a runaway convention and what the progressives are going to do at that convention. So I think that tells us that American history is probably right, that the convention probably will not ever happen, but it has always been used to move Congress off the dime to get amendments that we need. And I think that's the consideration we should look at here. And as for what you could do about it, the concern further than what's already been done, and again, I think much has been done in this language already. Two things. This would be number 6, if Mr. Mineta is correct in the States. That's a long way to go before you get to 2/3. And this call for a convention, if you're seeing that it is ending up going in a direction that you didn't contemplate, can rescind and repeal this. The other thing is you could do what our friends in Wyoming do, and we have many American Promise members there. They call themselves Wyoming Promise. They're advancing a similar measure as this on the ballot. And Wyoming has passed a law making it a criminal offense to go to a convention as a delegate and depart from the instructions of the state's call. Now, I'm not sure that's necessary, but there are things you could do outside this bill, but I think there's time enough to consider those things.
There is a
after
long
passage
history
of this.
short of that, of delegates being directly instructed, including in our neighbor to the north, New Hampshire, where they were instructed to vote against the U.S. Constitution at the Article 7 convention to ratify the Constitution. They went, discovered that their constituents had instructed them incorrectly, but they were bound by the instructions. So they actually returned to their constituents and convinced them that to change their opinions with rhetoric, not with political tricks, and got new instructions and went back and ratified the U.S. Constitution, becoming the 9th state.